Because really, when you think about it too, right? The whole thing of like thoughts control your feelings that control your behavior. At the top, you have to get a hold of people's thoughts. You have to. It's interesting too, because it's like the bite model, the behavior, the information, the thought, and the emotion. And if there was a different word that had thought and emotion first, that's really how it should go, because
it's more accurate.
Everything comes from the thought and the emotion control.
It's true. So speaking of that, emotional control. All right, so here we go. Manipulate and narrow the range of feelings. Some emotions and or needs are deemed evil, wrong, or selfish.
Most of them.
It's true.
Anything that went against, it's like the group think, and like the kingdom, down to, I don't have the money. And this isn't even I don't even know what this is. This is not even an emotion, but I'm tired, or whatever it is, to
that's
go
a need.
But I'm like, to go out of my way to pick somebody up and bring them and then take them home. And if you're like, I can't do it, you are selfish. Like, you are selfish. And that is something I heard a lot,
over and over again.
Yes.
And even things like, and this was more, I think I heard this more toward, again, in the 80s and 90s. But if you had too much empathy towards someone, or were sympathetic towards someone, that was sentimentalism. Do you hear that word?
Yes. That's my problem.
And that was bad. It got in the way of the mission.
Yes. And just even like any feeling that you have.
Yes. I mean, feeling attracted to the wrong person, to an unapproved person, was sinful. Just you're anything other than being where you were supposed to be, doing what you were supposed to do with a smile on your face, and being loud and outgoing, but not too loud.
Right.
Not obnoxious.
Right. Because then you're like selfish because you want the attention on you.
All the attention on you. Yes. But anything outside anything outside of that was wrong.
If you're tired, and I'm like, I feel like most of it was selfish, or things like divisive, argumentative, prideful, like all of these, just everything is negative when it's just an honest like experience that you're having. Like, you can't get your feelings hurt by somebody who is above you.
That's true.
Like, that's not a thing. They can't say the wrong, you can't acknowledge that they might have said the wrong thing, or heaven forbid they even have the wrong interpretation of, or the wrong view of what your life
because
is,
then you're being prideful and defensive.
Right. And I'm like, yes, you know what? This makes me defensive. I wasn't, but now I am.
And you can't be hesitant or apprehensive about doing something that you've been told to do when your gut tells you not to, because you're being selfish and timid often.
Timid. Timidity. I was very timid.
Me too.
Like, partially because you guys, I'm scared. Like, you couldn't be yourself.
No.
Even if yourself what, and so that means that even if you're not in any, like, and I'll tell you, because I am reserved and I'm quiet in most situations, but when I'm comfortable, I'm not. Same with you.
Yeah, it's true.
The thing is I don't know that there was ever a situation where I was ever even like with anybody. Like, we used to go hang out with people. I think you and I went together, the sisters who lived in Riverdale.
Yes.
We would go hang out at their place, like, during the summer and stuff like that. There was never a time where I felt like I could be myself. I was always
Me neither. I always felt like I was under a microscope.
Yes.
And even to the extent that outside of like my immediate discipler, I knew, and this is not like, I have no hard feelings toward mom for this, but I knew even as a child, once we joined the church, everything I did was being talked about.
Oh my gosh.
To her discipler and her, friends.
And you could tell because the way they interact with you, it's not hard to figure that out.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, so yeah, it's like.
So you just grow up under scrutiny.
Yeah.
So of course you never feel comfortable.
Right. Right. So why would I say anything? Why would I smile? And I'll tell you, we smiled quite a bit considering what was going on, like natural smiling. Yeah. I smiled, like, but yeah, timidity.
But I still smile as a reflex.
Oh yeah.
That's my default. If I'm in any way uncomfortable or threatened, that's what I do.
Yeah. Yes, because anything, and that's my thing, is like, because anything else is disrespectful.
Yes, you want to diffuse any potential
conflict. Yes, like that nervous smiling. Yeah, not fun.
No. Emotion stopping techniques.
I Googled it, and it just,
I'm looking
here are some pointers to get you started.
How to control your emotions. Take a deep breath. No one do it. Okay, no, that's all healthy stuff. Let's see here. So I think that's the same as kind of along the lines of thought stopping techniques, like praying, chanting.
Yeah. It's something
so I don't. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say something that comes to my mind. When you're told that, if you're tired, that's selfish. Or if you don't feel like, if you're not feeling like happy, like smiling, that's timid. It's like you're taught to judge your emotions and replace them, because there was never just like, well, you're being timid. It's like, you're being timid. You need to be out of yourself. And this is what out of yourself looks like. So it's like, yes, I think for me, I feel like that's what it was. It was like, I'm going to criticize myself and replace it because I've already been criticized. I'm going to just do what other people have done to me emotionally. You know what I mean? Maybe.
That makes sense to me.
And like homesickness, I don't know, like anger and doubt.
I think doubt, certainly. And even anger, like anything. There was, you couldn't.
No.
I mean, I guess if you were high enough up in the food chain and you needed to rebuke someone, you could be angry with them and that was okay.
Yeah.
But as far as just anger in general,
no, I feel like there was a lot of anger and like disappointment pointed at me. Me too. That was it.
So, and that feeds into make the person feel that problems are always their own fault, never the leader's or the group's fault. Yeah. And, the closest thing to an apology that you would ever get, if you dared to tell someone that they had hurt your feelings, was, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. There are all these non-apologies, but very quickly that was usually followed up with a but.
Here's the real situation, and here's what you did wrong.
Here's why you're wrong.
Yep. And not only you're wrong, your feelings are also wrong. Like, so don't trust, like, it's this loop. It's like, it is. Yeah. Yeah. There was I don't think I ever even asked. I don't think I ever approached anybody for an apology in the church cult.
No. I don't I don't think
never.
I'm trying to remember. Probably not. Because I knew I had seen what happened to other people.
Yes. Yes.
And I was not ready I wasn't going to sign up for that.
No way. No. Because then you're like, everybody knows. And that was the worst, when I would get like, I have to meet with my discipler, and then we're like at the hotel and we're having this long conversation and everyone's walking. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. And people who are higher up know not just that something's going on, they know exactly what's being said because they're all in on it. So it's the weirdest thing. And not just the women either. It's not just like, it was the men, like any like in campus, any guy or girl who were at least like one level up from you, which was like everybody for me, like they all knew. Because they would give knowing looks to the person you're talking to, and they would like stop in and like say something. And I was just like, shut down. I think I just like, I wouldn't cry. I didn't cry. I just like shut down emotionally. I was just like, And then I got really good at then like taking a breath. Why don't you go to the bathroom and then come in? I'm like, okay. Because leaving isn't an option. You just freaking mess me up. And I'm like but then I'd be like, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm so glad you're here. And you know, like that whole thing. I'm great. I'm good. That's awesome. I didn't say awesome very much because that would annoy me. But everybody would say that. It's awesome.
Yes.
But you go side hug everybody. Hi. Oh, thanks. Oh, you saved me a seat. Thank you so much. You who just embarrassed me and berated me, you know, and I'm like, because whatever they just
And
said
you were
to
going to
you,
sit next to me telling me to clap louder and
exactly,
smile
you are
more
now being observed.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me very angry when I think about it now. It is so wrong. It's so abusive. And it's creepy because it's like everywhere. You go into that room and everybody is involved in some form of this in one way or another. There's nobody who's not.
Yes.
That's crazy to me. Promote feelings of guilt.
Guilt or unworthiness. Yes. That's like the whole.
This is going way too deep for me.
Like you're not living up to your potential. Always. I mean, you're always in sin, no matter what.
Yes. No matter what.
And it's not, you know, I think that in a lot of Christian denominations, there's some churches that, you know, have, you know, the doctrine that everyone's a sinner, everyone sins. That's why you need grace. But that's just it. Everyone is in the same boat.
Right.
And so you can't, you know, it's just the human condition and you can't avoid it. So we're here to help each other out. That was not what was happening in this group.
No.
In this group, you were in sin, and that meant you were terrible. And it was impossible to live up to for me, it was impossible for me to live up to the standard that was set for me.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You might be about to answer my question.
Because part of that standard was being someone that I'm not.
Right.
It's having a personality that is completely opposite of my personality.
Yes.
Which means that my personality was utterly devalued.
Yeah.
Anytime that I was just me, that was wrong.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say?
Oh, I was kind of going to ask that. Like, what was your how did you define, like, what was the definition of that standard?
So the definition of that standard was, when I was not in church, a couple things. Number one, I had to be excellent at everything. So I would be a good example and draw people to the church. I also should be, I never did this, but I felt like I should be sharing my faith with everyone all the time. And then in church, I felt like I should be an extrovert.
Yeah.
Outgoing and happy all the time. And going along with anything everyone was doing, just not, you know,
not yourself.
Like I'm actually a pretty happy person.
Right.
Come to find out. But the fact that, like, it took me a long time to learn, okay, I'm an introvert, and introverts bring really good things to the table.
Yeah.
When you're in a group that values that.
Right. Just like it doesn't, like any person, there's value in what you observe or what you like, anything, there's value in it. And part of it is like, oh my gosh, if you're thinking about it within the structure of like God and whatever, but God doesn't make mistakes. So then why do I feel like I don't want to do this and I'm going to get in trouble for it? You know, it's like, so this, like all this mixed message stuff.
It's your sinful natures there.
It's your sinful nature.
We were the sinful nature.
It's true. It's true. See this sinful nature right here in the flesh.
Yes.
No, that's true. The acts of the sinful nature are obvious. look right here, this person.
Oh my goodness. Even like, it's funny because the flip side of that is when you read in the Bible about the fruits of the Spirit, things like love, patience, peacefulness,
Yes.
joy.
Yes.
Like love, patience, peacefulness. No.
Nope.
The fruits of the Spirit were totally cherry picked for us.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to do with bringing people to church, baptizing people, giving lots of money to the church.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yep, pretty much. And just following our leaders.
That's it. You got to go along. Do not point out, because I'll tell you, there's so much that went on that should have been handled.
Yes.
But we were all too sinful. Like, so. It's this whole, oh my gosh, it's just bizarre. Like how they get away with this stuff by manipulating people. It's very, and it's like the other thing for me also might just be something with my personal growth at the moment. I don't know. But the idea that I don't have to make excuses or explain what I do and don't want to do, or why I feel a certain way, or like that, like you're worthy because you are you. Like, but there's this constant, and it comes from church or cult, whatever you want to call it, like that I'm constantly making excuses for myself, and I'm constantly trying to explain why I did this, or like why I'm feeling this way, or like it's always this, like I'm trying to justify like, instead of being like, this is me. Yep. And it's fine. Whatever it is fine. And I feel like that's the thing. There are times when, like, if you go into a church service and the preacher stands up there and goes, all these people, these thousands of people, they all want to be here every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Friday, every Sunday night. Look around and go, when have you ever known a group of people who always wants to be someplace all the time? There's at least one person in here who's tired, or who just didn't feel like going today, because I'll tell you what, it's a lot of work. It is, like physically to get there, but it's like sitting there and just like taking in, it's just a bunch of crap they're piling on you. And you're like, thank you, thank you, amen. And they're just constantly telling you how bad you are. Like, that's the main thing, because if they don't convince you of how horrible you are, they can't convince you that you need to follow them to be good. Yes. But I'm like, it's just crazy to me. And it's abusive, and it's sad. It is. You're right. But anyway, that's my rant about, apparently I wasn't as tired as I thought I was. I feel very ranty tonight. I can edit it out. So you're just like, No, I disagree with you. I'm not timid now, am I? Wait. Okay. Oh gosh. Making our way through the list. Instill fear, such as fear of thinking independently, the outside world, enemies, losing one's salvation, leaving or being shunned by the group, others' disapproval. Yep. Check, and check. Yep, check them all. Check them all. I mean, I think that while I was definitely afraid of others' disapproval, because the people who were in a position to disapprove of you were sort of, I mean, it was never overtly stated this way necessarily, but they were kind of proxies for God. Yeah. So if you were, if you weren't living up to expectations, then God was displeased with you. It's true. And I did not want that. No. Thinking independently, definitely. That goes back to, like, it took me so long to just be able to make a decision, and then make a mistake and be okay with it, and that it doesn't reflect on anything I did. Like, it's not on who I am. It's not a moral failing. Yeah. Right. It's just a mistake. It's just a mistake. Yeah. Fearing of the outside world. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So many stories. What stories were you told about people who fell away and what happened to them? Well, the main thing I remember, which is ridiculous, was whenever I left in college, or I fell away, and I got the honor of meeting with my discipleship partner. It's the only time I've ever really wanted to go to statistics on time. When I met with her right before statistics. Gotta go. Dr. Pate's waiting for me. I can't understand anything he's saying. And he just would walk around on the stage with a handheld microphone and just talk math and like berate people who ask questions. So I was like, hey, it's like church.
It's like church. You're used to it.
Yes. I feel dumb and nobody helps me. Church. But she was like, when people fall away, they either get really fat or get really in shape. And I'm like, now I was running the other day thinking about that, like, that's pretty much everybody's process in life. Like,
yes.
You never stay the same.
That's true.
But there was all these things, like stories being told about like women who were walking through the city, and thank goodness they were disciples, because the guys who raped the women behind her thought that she saw angels standing next to it, like big men, and they must have been angels. Like, yes. I'm like, really?
That's just dumb, number one. But also, what does that say about how we think about those other women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just sick.
It is sick. And I don't know that there were stories there were stories that I heard, but it was like this general overall, like, the whole thing of like, we don't have divorces in the kingdom. Mm-hmm. Okay, did you hear Bridget then?
I did.
1 second, let me finish this one story. She's not even looking at me. She's like, the whole thing of like, there aren't divorces in the kingdom.
Yeah.
But that implies there, not just that, but like, Mom talked about, she went to a thing, like a group for women whose husbands weren't non-Christian husbands. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing was, I guess, that they're liars and they're abusers and mm-hmm. they're cheating on you. Mm-hmm. And she was like, here's the thing, right? Mom's so funny because she kept going to church, but she never went back to that group. And she told them, she was like, my husband is a good man. And they were like, we don't think so. Wow. Like, I think you're confused. And she'd never go back. And then I guess whenever he got baptized, speaking of apologies, this isn't an apology, but I guess whenever Dad got baptized, at least one of those people came back and said, you were right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yes.
Wow.
It is. What were your messages? Like, what were your...
So I don't remember sermons about, there are no divorces in the church, in the kingdom, but that was coupled with that stupid statistic, the false statistic about how 50% of divorces in the United States or marriages in the United States end in divorce.
Right.
Like, number one, that's not true to begin with. But number two, the implication was that divorce was just rampant in the world.
Right.
And, it's like spouses people were doing drugs and cheating on each other.
Right.
And
porn addictions.
Oh my goodness.
Lots of pornography talk.
Spiritual and otherwise.
Right. Yes. I was like, how is that?
That was definitely, and I definitely got, especially in like the year or so that I spent in campus, it was definitely like, you're so lucky. We're so lucky to have the dating relationships that we have in the kingdom. God,
yes.
Because, like, basically things are totally transactional and everything's about sex and not about getting to know people and building relationships outside the kingdom, which, that's why everybody gets divorced, I guess. I mean, that was the message.
Yeah.
But, so that was, I heard a lot of that. And then I heard the same story a couple different times about some former sister who fell away and went back to her old life of partying. And one night she was out with friends and like got really, really drunk and I think the story was that they were like driving down the road and she was like leaning out of the car or something. Oh. And she, like, her head hit a road sign. And, split her skull or something like that.
That's weird.
Do you remember that?
Oh my gosh, I kind of do, because I'm always with the kids. I'm always like, don't put your heads outside the window. There could be a sign.
I also had a friend who was not in the church when I was young, like middle school age, whose mom not to put her heads out the window because when she was a kid, she was driving down the interstate and she saw a kid sticking his head out the window, and an 18-wheeler came by and knocked his head off and went rolling down the highway.
That's so gross.
So, yes.
Also, I'm like, dude, that they were way too close. Those vehicles.
I remember thinking, how did that happen?
Yes, this just doesn't make sense. Stop it. Don't be selfish. Don't be divisive.
Yes.
That's funny. There was a lot of that, like, oh, when they fell away. And also there were stories about like, oh, lots of this, like, so she fell away and then she went because she missed her boyfriend. So she went back to her boyfriend, and then, like they were living together and she knew that it was in sin and then they broke up and like she wound up coming back. So it's like not anything that's like this horrible anything, but it's like it was so bad. And I'm like, I don't know what's so bad about that. Like, look at our lives here. Yes. This isn't pretty what's going on in this campus ministry. Because I think the campus ministry is the worst. It's the most abusive of.
I agree.
I haven't been in like the singles and whatever, but because there were lots of things like, if you fall away, you'll fail your classes. Or things that are like just not true. And then there was a lot of stuff like, if you pray for money, God will provide. If you pray for a house, God will provide. If you pray for a spouse, God, live in line with what God wants of you, and it will come to you.
Yes.
But that means that if you're not, you got nothing.
You must be doing something wrong. Yeah.
Right. And that's the other thing. Like, if anybody was sick in the church, that implied something spiritual. Not doing well in school, not having a job, not having a good job, like your family not being disciples, like all of this stuff, everything was used to put people in the hierarchy.
It's true.
And to instill fear.
It's true. And that going back to, if every good thing in your life is literally from God, and God only blesses people who are in the kingdom, who are disciples, then if you fall away, all that goes away. Right. I mean, that was really the bottom line of what we were taught.
Right. And then the question of, well, what about all the people who have a lot of money, who have good paying jobs, but they're in sin. They're living in sin. Yes. So it might look good, but they're in sin and they're addicted, and they are like
fighting with their spouses behind closed doors and beating their kids, and
yes, they don't want to continue with life, and like any, which is also really interesting. It'll be really interesting to go through and like pull those sermons out and like find out more about who's preaching it, because anything, I think that it's some of that stuff is personal, whether it's a fear that they have, whether it's an experience that they had, whatever it is, it's like you're just taking on everybody else's crap.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'll tell you what, I will tell you that whenever I think, and it didn't matter, like that I studied the Bible and I was baptized, and the whole idea of like, now you're saved, whatever. I never felt like that, ever. And so there was a period of time, it was really tornado-y. Like it was really bad tornado season. And I remember just staying up at night being, and I'm still afraid of storms. And part of it comes from this, terrified. I know it's ridiculous. The tornado.
I was like, I need to apologize to you, because I think the other part probably comes from me locking you out of the house when it was windy when you were little. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Like, but I can handle the wind now. Every now and again, seriously, I don't like that feeling of having my breath taken away.
Yes.
No. And I was like, do you see me? I'm going to get blown away by the wind, and the dragonflies are going to carry me if the wind doesn't get me. And you're like, dragonflies, wind, see ya. I remember standing in between the door to the house and the storm door, and like trying to like close myself.
Sarah, I'm so sorry. I was so mean to you.
Oh, I'm sure I got you back. I don't remember. I'll
probably did
later. Yeah. But yeah. That was also scary, but I don't think that's the same. That's not the same. But I was afraid a tornado would come, it would hit the house, we would die, and I would go to hell.
And you would be ready. Yes.
You know,
I had
there's
the
a
exact
train
same
coming.
fear. to run over you. I don't
Right.
think that's what that song was intended to mean.
It was like you live in fear of dying, which is like the complete opposite of the whole
Of the
thing.
way it's supposed to be. Exactly.
Yes. That's so sad.
Yes, it is.
It really is. So
like I remember that got into my the whole like the outside world is evil and dating in the world is just terrible. Like when I first left, I fell away at the end of my freshman year of college. About 6 months later, I met Larry. And so the day that I met him, like he invited me to the student center for a Sprite.
Aww, that's so sweet.
And I wouldn't let him pay for my Sprite because I was like, I don't know this
date.
guy and he's worldly and I do not know what he's going to think that I owe him if I let
For
him
this Sprite.
buy me a Sprite. And I remember being really like,
Aww.
I decided, like he asked me out, so I decided to go on a date with him, and I was all like, did not know what to expect. And yeah, you know about our first date, right?
I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe I do, but I don't remember.
So his best friend at the time was Mormon.
Oh yeah.
And so we went to his best friend's house, a double date with his best friend and his best friend's girlfriend. And we sat on his mom and dad's sofa, all four of us, and watched My Girl. And then when the movie was over, his brothers and sisters came out and played their instruments for us.
Oh my gosh, I do remember that a little bit. That's like the craziest story.
And then
Aww.
We went home and I was like, okay, I'm probably okay here. Now I look back and go, that was really weird, but it was good. It was good. It
was a good transition. Like that's just what you needed.
And I'm sure mom and dad were quite relieved to hear that story when I got home.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
But funny. Years of being in the church had built up in my mind all these fears.
And that's like, I don't even remember because I know that I was in high school. So I was in high school ministry. That's why I got my first taste of dating, which was weird. But, and then I guess I fell away in high school. There wasn't a lot of dating going on, especially not when you know everybody in your class.
Yeah.
There was not much dating going on. So I don't think I really dated until campus anyway. But the thing is but I hung out with people, it's not like you're dating. Because here's the thing too, right? So I don't know how other cults do it, but in the ICOC and in the ICC, you're not dating isn't a person of your choice. It's not the same person, even once every 8 weeks. It was you're just going wherever these guys want you to go with literally strangers. And sometimes you're in a car with a whole bunch of strangers.
Yes.
And here's the other thing that's a little bit creepy. There were times because the guys would always ride together and you would be the first one to get picked up.
So you're just sitting in a car with
strange men.
Yep. That's just crazy.
It is
thinking about crazy. That now.
Yeah. Yes.
And the other thing is, I didn't really, like you, I didn't date much in the teens, but when I got to campus, I was 17 years old and I was going on dates with grown men in grad school.
That's crazy.
And not because we met and were interested in each other and wanted to go out together. It was because for whatever reason, this man asked me out and I had to say yes.
Right. You had to say yes.
Because you had to encourage the brothers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was this whole encourage the brothers. And that's when I was in high school. And in high school ministry, I dated some. But even then, I was a freshman and going on dates with seniors. Or there was one.
Mom and dad let you do that? Because I was not, even in the church, I was not allowed to date until I was 16.
Mom and dad, I don't I don't know. I don't remember mom and dad being there and like asking permission.
I think maybe they used up all their rules on me.
Right. They were also like, this girl, she doesn't do rules.
That's
They
true.
decided that, but whenever I left church, they sure tried to put the rules down on me, which was, I'm like I could have played that better, actually, come to think of it. Like, I should just keep going to church. Then I would have a lot more freedom, but whatever. But I don't remember. It was like a thing where I was just, this is what's going to happen. This is where we're going. This is what I'm doing. And maybe I asked, but I feel like I kind of just told them. But I don't know.
By that time, it could have been just so normalized for them that they assumed that it was,
I'm like, fine. I don't know how they didn't worry about me. I'm going to strange people's houses with other strangers.
All over this city. Yeah.
Yes. And like, they don't even know who's like driving me. Like, they might have a name. I don't even know if they had a name all the time. It'd be like, John's coming to pick me up and he's bringing Jack and Jake and Cindy and Lou. You know what I mean?
Yes, and they're like, it's true.
And I'm like, but I don't ever remember there being a question because they're not allowed to say no. So, but that was, and even in high school, there was like, you know how they used to have that banquet. I don't know if it was a spring banquet or it was a something banquet every year. I think it was in place of prom.
Yes.
And so it must have been my freshman year because we hadn't moved outside of Beaufort yet.
Okay.
And the other, I'm like, we're not saying names, right? And we can't even use, I can't use initials because her name is an initial. But I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And it was a spring formal, which was kind of in place of prom, except for it was nothing like prom at all. And I didn't have a date, and neither did she, my friend. And so I could be remembering this wrong, but I don't think I am. I think I was a freshman. And so we got dates because I guess there were no high school guys left. They were all taken up. I don't know. So her date's name was Shane. And his buddy, I feel like it was like Ted. It might have been Ted, actually.
Okay.
But they were from Georgia Tech.
What?
Yes. So I went on a double date to the spring formal whatever.
With a stranger from Georgia Tech.
With a stranger from Georgia Tech.
When you were a freshman in high school.
When I was a freshman in high school. And it was as bad as it sounds.
Yikes.
They weren't even like fun. And the thing was, like, these formals, like, you're not dancing. There was no dancing. It was like you sit, you eat, you feel judged. It was like church.
Yes, like they had like, I think I went to one and they had like an award ceremony or something.
Did they? I don't remember.
I don't know.
I'm sure they did, probably for the seniors. Yes.
Yeah. Oof. I don't know.
Yeah. But like, yeah, that was my dating from high school. Like, that's what it was like. And then it was just constant, like, because here's the thing, nobody wanted to go on a second date with me. If they did, I didn't know. And there was nobody I wanted to go on a second date with. Because
it's funny because, go ahead.
What were you going to say?
Finish what you're going to say.
I was going to say, the guys that I really wanted to go on dates with were the guys that were like, so not like, they were so on the weekend struggling list that nobody was allowed to date them. But I'm like, they are freaking hilarious. And they're themselves, and that's attractive.
That's true.
And they were like, it wasn't a thing. So what were you going to say?
And maybe, like, I don't know that maybe it just never occurred to me that I could. But I was never asked.
Humiliated. I didn't want to be humiliated.
That's true too. There was one person, a very, very good friend of mine in the teens. And he was a year behind me in school. We went to different schools. But it's funny because he is someone that I would have wanted to go out with. And I didn't even broach the subject because I knew it wouldn't be allowed. And I also knew, like, I think I really hurt his feelings because he went out of town to visit his dad the summer after I graduated. And I was told to move from the teen ministry to the campus ministry at some point during the summer before school started. So I did, which means that I wasn't in the teens when he got back. And I think it really hurt his feelings that I didn't wait for him. But the thing is, there was no autonomy. Like, I guess I could have said, no, I'm not going to campus until this person gets back, but that would not have been well received. And I certainly, it did not occur to me to do that.
No.
So, you know, there, yeah.
I remember that actually. That was like not a simple thing.
No.
Because I remember that. Yeah. And then for me,
he was a good guy.
He was a good guy. I remember that too. Had some fans in our family.
Indeed.
But yeah, like, so then dating on campus was pretty much dating in high school, except for because then I think in high school the guys were still a little bit like insecure, but it felt like in campus, like they were just like God's gift to, that's how it felt. It felt like there was a lot of pride actually. And then it was, in high school, there wasn't as much pressure because like one thing they did right was they did not marry off high schoolers. So let's give them credit for that.
That's true. Yes.
But once you step foot in campus ministry, they're trying to, like, dating isn't light.
No.
And so as much as it's not centered around sex, but the weird thing is like they talk about it so much that it's constantly awkward, because then I'm like, the only thing this person's thinking about is that. And then I'm like, oh, like you don't, like, literally, if I like have to not like glance his arm, like there is no touching.
Yes.
Like, you do not even like accidentally. And the other thing was you have to let him be the leader. He needs to be the leader, which means I don't get to choose the music unless he offers to let me choose the music. And I like all of these things was like, I cannot be myself. And like, it was down to like, you get rebuked if you talk too much, if you lead conversations too much.
But you also get rebuked if you don't talk enough because you're not being encouraging enough.
Right.
You cannot win.
You can't win. So there was a lot of that, just like weirdness. Very, very weird. But it was like so much tension because it was very much like you literally couldn't touch each other. You couldn't talk. Like, you had to be so careful about what you said, because if you said anything that could be just like construed in a different way.
Yes, then you were making him struggle. Yep. That's true.
Like, so
like I went on a couple dates in campus with people that like I would not have chosen to date them. Like I wasn't attracted to them or anything like that, but I had a nice time with them and they were really nice guys. So I was lucky in that respect. The vast majority of my dates were not like that.
Yeah.
Like they weren't bad people. It was just, like you said, intensely awkward.
Yeah.
And you're right about cocky college guys.
Yeah.
And like one in particular, I went on a couple dates with him over a period of time during my freshman year of college. And in the spring, at one point, we were going out and he came to pick me up and we are in the car and he tells me that like what he was saying to me was like, basically, I know you're really interested in me and you want to date me, but we can't date because you're not spiritual enough to date me. So this is going to be the last time that we go out. And I was like, okay, because I was going out with him because he was asking.
Right. Here, let me fill you in on the way this works, because I don't know where you've been, but you're not getting cookies, by the way.
Seriously.
The simplest part I can find or make.
Cookies.
Of course. Everybody gets, and we're talking about actual cookies, like literally chocolate chip.
Yes.
Not any other. We're not talking about
No, we're not speaking euphemistically.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I'm like, there were a couple guys who were like, they were fine. They were nice.
Decent guys, yeah.
Yes, but the other thing that was weird was like we weren't allowed to have friendships. I didn't feel like I was allowed to have friendships with guys. So it was like, I didn't ever know them. Like, and here's the thing too, right? It's like whenever I left, both in high school and in college, I had guy friends. I had guy friends who had girlfriends, And I would just hang out because like I'm fun. I don't know. Like, you know, they were easy. It was easier for me to have friendships with guys. And so it was natural. Like you just get this, you know, because you're friends and you want to hang out.
Yeah.
And so that was completely lacking because like you're not to sit next to them in church. No. Like it's extreme.
Yes.
The lengths that how they separate. So it was just like being in the presence of any guy was weird. So and there were and there were a couple, maybe like 2 guys that were like, they were good at going on dates, and I don't know how they learned it. But the other guys were not, and it was torturous. Like, I can't wait to go home. Please just let me please let me get back to the apartment with the 3 other disciples who are going to berate me, and then like, how was it? Like we're in this like, you know, teen movie. Let me get the pillow. And I'm like, oh goodness. And you're not allowed to say anything bad.
Yeah.
Although you would say, oh, I went out on a date with, you know, Floofy McFloofface, and like, oh
him.
Yeah, like enough said, good night. Yes. Like, but in general, you're not allowed to criticize at all.
No.
Which really means that nobody can grow.
It's true.
But yeah. And by the way, dating outside of the church was way better.
Oh gosh, yes.
Just for wondering. Yep. So yeah, this is going on and on, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the list. So next up is extremes of emotional highs and lows, love bombing and praise one moment, and then declaring you're a horrible sinner.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Did you just hear that?
I wasn't listening.
There are potty words coming from the living room.
Oh, that's appropriate.
It's okay.
Getting to that point. Yeah, so that's just a given.
Yeah.
They take you high, then they knock you down, and then they yes, it's a constant roller coaster of emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ritualistic and sometimes public confession of sins. Like, yes. Every day you're supposed to call your discipler and confess your sins.
Yeah.
And then I don't know that I was made to publicly confess my sins, but I was called out in front of groups.
Yeah.
Over things that I did.
I don't know that I was ever. Is called out a church word? Or is called out like a regular word? Because I don't know. Because it sounds like I'm like, oh yeah, you were called out.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it was like singled out in front of other people. Yeah. Like when I was in high school, a friend and I spent the night at our actually with a group of girls at our team leader's house. And this team leader was actually one of the really, really nice, great team leaders.
Okay, that's good.
But after church, apparently this friend and I had been, like, we were inconsiderate. We didn't clean up our stuff. We left her house a mess. So she got all the teen girls from our little area together for a meeting. And during the meeting, she had us come up and singled us. Like, we were all standing around, but she had us come stand next to her and like rebuked us for leaving her house a mess.
Oh, Selena.
So yeah,
that's not right.
And then another time when I was it was teens as well.
Teens.
The guy that I was close to, I went and picked him up from soccer practice after school one day, and we had like Devo or Bible talk or something that night. So I took him over to his house and I sat in his living room. His mom wasn't home. Sat in his living room and watched Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves while he took a shower and changed after soccer. And then we hopped in the car and went to church. And I don't know who found out, but someone found out. And again, it was like they were alone together at his house. And it was in front of everyone. Yeah.
That is wild. I don't remember that. For me personally, I don't remember that happening. It might have. But they would call people, they would do things like they would, you know, it's like, not to name any names, OU sitting over there with the blue shirt and the, you know, like everybody knows.
Yes.
So they like, I remember a lot of that. Well, and then like when we were in our little like Bible talks, that kind of crap would happen.
Yeah.
Where they would call you out on stuff. And it's embarrassing. It was like, oh my gosh, so humiliating.
It's humiliating and it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
But it's done for a reason.
So you're told. Well, that reason and this reason.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then the other thing of like the sin list.
Oh gosh. Yes.
So that's a whole nother, we should do a whole episode on the sin lists.
Yeah.
Because they were real and they were passed around and they were detailed. And have you read them? Have you seen copies of some, like,
I have.
The stuff that they say, I'm like, how judgmental are you? Like, that's not even fact. You're just passing judgment and you sound like an ass.
Jerk. Yep. It's true.
Like, I can't believe that. And some of it, I'm like, well, that's a little racist. Like, there's some, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Phobia indoctrination. Doesn't that kind of go up to being afraid of the outside world?
It's, yep. Terrible consequences if you leave. Hell, demon possession, incurable diseases, accidents, suicide, insanity, 10,000 reincarnations.
That was one they didn't know.
So yeah, they hit a lot of them.
Yeah. That was it.
Shunning of those who leave. So I think we were both fortunate in that I think we were both confident that our parents, like our family, would never have shunned us. But if I know that there were people who felt like their relationships within the church were authentic. And if you fell away, very quickly after you fell away, the people who were close to you would call you and try and get you back in. But if that didn't work, they cut off communication.
Yep.
So I think both times that I left, by the time that I left, I was convinced that the vast majority of my peer relationships weren't authentic. They were engineered by the church. So I was relieved to not have to deal with certain people anymore.
Yes. Yeah. And when I think about it, especially in high school, I think, but I don't know about in campus, but in high school, I think that it was also this interesting thing where people stopped talking to me before I ever left. Like when they find out you're struggling, you stop getting, people don't talk to you.
Yeah, they back away.
Yeah. Yes. So I think that it was this, and that made it awful to go to like Bible talk because nobody's your friend. You walk in like nobody's happy to see you.
That's true.
And then you're like, but you're not allowed to leave. So you have to stay, but nobody wants to talk to you. And then you know that when people are talking to you, they don't want to be talking to you. And you also know that anything you say can and will be used against you at any
very
point.
True.
So it's like, yeah. And then once I left, like, there's like, they try to get you back and they try to scare you. And then you're dead. You are dead to them. Which, I was like, that's fine. If you could just keep not talking to me.
Just never speak to me again.
Yeah. Yep. I'm good. But then it's college. In college, I would hear them coming because you could tell.
Yes.
You didn't even know who they were. You just know. And I would like run behind the stairwell. Or I would like pretend like I was reading something. He's like, I know. It's funny because now I'd be like, you want to talk to me? Let's have a conversation. But then I was like so scared. Butterflies and my palms would get sweaty. Like they had this power over me and this control.
Yeah. Yep. If I was on campus between 10 and 10:50, I made sure I was not out walking around anywhere.
No, do not. Yeah.
And I also knew the areas to avoid.
Exactly. Yes. What was I going to say? I was going to say one other thing about that, but I can't remember what it was. But yeah. It was not good. Oh, I was going to say because I think I had been humiliated enough in front of other people to know that it was a possibility.
Yes.
And that's terrifying, especially when you're like a young adult.
A young adult who's just left in an intensely, in my opinion, abusive situation that you essentially grew up in. So you're trying to kind of shed those old patterns and figure out who the heck you are.
Yeah.
and what your place is in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, you're like teetering on the edge
Mm-hmm.
of being sucked back into that bad place.
Yeah. Yes. And you're still trying to like reconcile, because I think we've talked about this a little bit. Like, my inner voice was that of everybody who'd ever done anything or said anything bad about me. Like, it was Kit McKean's voice
Absolutely.
in my
Yes.
head. And it's, to a certain extent, I'm realizing it still is. It
Mhm.
still is, just less. But at that time, yeah. So I'm like, it's just a really confusing, conflicted place to be, when you know, though, that when you leave, outside of the fear of going to hell,
Mhm. Things are so much better.
It's a safer place.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but, and some of that goes to the fact that we did have family that it was a strained relationship when we weren't going, but they were there.
Mhm.
They didn't turn their backs on us, which is a big deal.
Yes.
Although I wonder if someone had told, Mom would have been like, hell no. She wouldn't have done it. She wouldn't have turned her back. If somebody had told them
No.
to, I don't think they would have.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that, trying to remember, when I left when I was in college, dad wasn't in church yet, so that wasn't an issue. He was traveling a ton. He just wasn't around much. But mom was very worried about me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the first couple of days, I remember people calling for me. This was way back before cell phones, so we had a house phone that she answered. And I remember I had a little like extension in my room. I remember unplugging the phone in my room and just staying in my room. And she would come to the door and tell me so and so was on the phone for me, and I would tell her I couldn't talk to them, and she was very concerned about that. So, and I felt very guilty about that.
Right.
So for like 2 or 3 days that happened, and then that died off. And then a week or two later, I told you the story about going out with my friend to Atlanta, and we stayed out later than expected. And I got home and mom was like in tears, upset, and told me, I'm so glad you're home. I just thought when you were late, all I could think was that you'd been in an accident, and if you died, you would go to hell. So there wasn't so any tension was, I mean, that was not great, but I did not feel like she was like upset with me or judging me. That it wasn't that kind of strain. It was that she was terrified for me.
Right.
So that made things tough. But
yeah. Like, I'm sure she was terrified for me too. She just didn't show it.
I think you guys had a lot more conflict in your relationship when you were younger.
Yeah. And I think by the time I had left, well, yeah, because it was interesting, because like I was in church, and then at some point dad got baptized, and then I fell away one of my many times. But so like, I think every time I fell away, dad was in church. So that changed things too. And they made me go, which we've talked about a little bit. So
Yeah.
I spent most of the time on the payphone. but they made me go and sit in church. And then I would just like avoid everybody. I would avoid people afterwards until they were ready to go. But
yeah,
it's just, and all of it's so damaging. Like, all of it, like what was put on us, what was put on mom and dad, like the whole thing. Because the other thing too is like, they were told that they were responsible for their children's salvation.
Yeah.
So it's this.
Now, I will tell you, there was serious conflict when I actually started seriously dating Larry.
Oh, yeah.
And that conflict was between dad and me, and dad and Larry.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wowee.
Indeed.
It's just, the whole thing is just, it's bizarre. It is bizarre.
It is sick and abusive.
It is.
And the emotional turmoil that all of us went through that was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Actually still makes me pretty angry.
Yeah. It's a wonder it didn't tear our family apart.
Uh-huh.
You know? to the extended family as well, not just like our immediate family, but this impacted aunts and uncles
and our grandmother and
So, but yeah, the whole idea of like no happiness or fulfillment possible outside of the group, all of these things I tell you, but like in your mind, it's not true.
Yes, because you have eyes and ears and you can see what's other people.
And the other thing too is like, and I'm like, but I'm not happy. I'm here and I'm not happy.
That's true.
So
yeah.
And that's why I fell away. Like that's because I was like, I am so miserable here. I can't do this. And whatever. It's interesting because in high school is when you start to really, or that around that age is when like developmentally you start to really pick up on when people are being hypocritical.
Oh yes.
So it kind of makes sense that there's a lot of like forcing these kids to go to, their Wednesday night Devo or Friday night Devo and church and whatever. It's like, and so many high schoolers are, I'll tell you what, the other thing is they force these kids to go and they're like, fine, we don't want to be here. And you think we're good because we're in church. So we're just all going to get in trouble together. And I was never one of those people because I felt like those were all the cool people. Like I never had that. We also lived out in the middle of nowhere.
We did. See, I was never one of those people because number one, I probably wouldn't have been invited. But number two, I internalized the church's doctrine so much that I wanted to please God. So I tried so hard. I thought he was watching me and I tried so hard to do the right thing. So I never would have, I never thought about what I could get away with. I didn't want to get away with anything. I just wanted to do what God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And I never could manage it, which is why I left.
Right.
So there were yeah.
But in my high school experience, when I was in the high school ministry, I wasn't like the things that could be done were not even on my radar. Because I was just like,
yes,
none of it was appealing. But I think by the time I got to campus, and even then I'm like, there's a lot of crazy stuff that people do. There's a lot of crazy stuff that people I knew in church, in high school did. And I remember going and spending the night with these girls and they were talking about stuff. And I'm just like, what? And their parents were leaders. These are like, and I was just like,
what were they doing?
Sneaking out with other like guys who go to church. Like there was a lot of like tattoos, which back in the day that was like, what?
That was a big deal.
Yes. But it's just like a lot of that, and then a lot of just like language and talking about drinking and like all of this stuff, and I'm just like, who are you people? Because basically, how do I not fit in?
Normal teenage stuff, but yes,
yes. Like, how am I not spiritual enough to be your friend? And so you're forced to have me over to hang out, but I'm listening to this, and I'm just like, I don't even want to be like you. Yes. Like, that's not where I want to be.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then whenever I got into campus, I just wanted to go on a normal date and I wanted to go out and dance. And yes, I did drink to excess, but that wasn't what I wanted. Like, I wanted to just be free.
Yeah.
And not have to sneak around and like lie about what I was doing.
Yes.
Yeah, because everything you're doing is wrong, even when you know it's not wrong. So you can't win.
Yep, you can't win.
Nope. I will say threats of harm to ex-member and family. The main threats are things like going to hell. They're going to cheat on you. They're going to, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was actually going to come.
Not for us.
No one threatened to come hurt me.
Right.
If I didn't come to church.
Right. So that's the bite model. It looks simple on paper.
Yes.
But that's a lot. And that's just like scratching the surface.
Yep. scratching the surface, our little experiences in
Yeah.
this huge group that is known for its abusive practices.
Yep.
And I mean, the bottom line is all of it boils down to trust yourself, trust
Yep.
your gut, trust your instincts.
Yep.
If something doesn't, like you said at the beginning, if something doesn't feel right about a group that you are in, take a step back, do some research,
Yeah.
think about why you're feeling that way. And if it's not an abusive group, you'll be able to go back.
Yeah.
And if it is an abusive group and there is, punishment if you try to go back, or there are barriers to going back, run.
Yes. Just get out.
Yep.
And keep going. And
yes.
Be okay with who you are. And we'll link the description. We'll put a link in the
description. Yes.
We'll all the descriptions will be in the descriptions.
We should do a link to the Freedom of Mind Resource Center too, because there's a ton of good information there.
Yes.
So if you've made it this far, thanks for sticking with us. We really, really appreciate you listening, and we hope you've gotten something valuable from this episode. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.